Well, I want to bring in Rudy Giuliani's spokesperson and advisor, Ted Goodman. You know, he was there beside Giuliani as he walked out of court today. Ted, thank you for being here today. I'm really curious because you have been by his side throughout much of this. You were actually with him as they announced that figure, that number and amount of damages. Tell me, what was the reaction in private?
Thank you for the opportunity, Laura. Yeah, that's right. I was by his side today and every day of this week, of course. The mayor remains confident in his beliefs, in what he knows to be true, and, of course, who he is as a man. This is the same man, right? This is the same man who took down the mafia. This is the same man who cleaned up the streets of New York City and lifted hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of New Yorkers out of poverty. This is also the same man who comforted not just the nation, but the entire world following the horrific attacks of September 11th.
You know, for the reasons you just stated, that's why perhaps it was been so shocking to people that he would find himself as a defendant in a case of this magnitude. It's not as if he is the sort of average non-litigant, somebody who's so familiar with what it would take to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, and of course threats or defamatory statements that have been made. And so when you talk about who he has been to the nation before, I wonder what has been his reaction knowing that he has been held responsible for the defamatory statements that were made.
Well, Laura, you know as a highly credentialed lawyer yourself that the mayor did not have the opportunity to defend himself at any point in this case. Of course, as you know, a default judgment was issued in this case over a discovery dispute. And you also know that this is highly unusual. And so, you know, this wasn't a trial. There was no trial this week on the facts. The fact remains that the mayor had zero opportunity to defend himself and what he knows to be true.
Well, Ted, as you know, he did have an opportunity to do so. The default judgment, the reason there is a protocol following a default judgment or for there to be a default judgment is because they've contemplated what happens when you fail to adhere to the court orders to provide information and discovery. And so why didn't he provide the information in time to avoid having that finding against him?
Laura, you just said they. Can you go back to what you just said? Who's they in that comment?
So I'm talking about
the
Rudy
judge.
Giuliani.
Oh, but you're talking about the judge.
Well, hold on. I'm sorry, Ted. Did you want me to answer the question you asked? And I'll give you the opportunity, okay? So you asked me who the they is. I was talking about how the judge, the court of law, the judge issued an order, discovery-wise, for the person to be able, who is now was being held responsible, in your case, the person you're beside, to provide information and be responsive to discovery. When he failed to do so, there was then eventually a default judgment. And so when Giuliani, the him, singular in this fashion, failed to provide information to the other side, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, he was held accountable at that point. Why didn't he just follow the timeline to be able to, as you say, have a chance to defend himself more adequately?
That's right, Laura. This default was entered over a discovery dispute, over an onerous and overly broad discovery request that was designed to overwhelm the mayor and his capacity to hand over such material. In fact, a lot of material was handed over. And again, so because of this dispute, again, this is a discovery dispute between the attorneys, this default judgment was issued. And so at no point this week did the mayor have the opportunity to defend himself on the facts. And so I just find that absolutely unfair. And so, of course, this matter will be appealed.
Well, certainly you have every right to do so. Naturally, the due process requirements seem to have been met by the judge, but I do understand your position in supporting him. But I do want to know, now that there has been a judgment entered based on this finding and the jurors making their determination, how is Rudy Giuliani intending to pay this figure?
Again, let's go. We have to make something clear for your audience. And I'm well aware that this audience may not be the most pro-Mayor Rudy Giuliani audience.
Why do you assume that?
Okay, well, I don't want to assume that. I'll take that back. I hope.
Then could you then answer the question?
I want to answer the question. Yes,
first.
I'm going to answer the question, but we have to clarify here. The fact remains what happened today was not a decision based on the facts, correct? the idea here that the mayor lied is again something that was decided by the judge by a default decision over a discovery dispute.
We've addressed that point, to which I have said that there has been a finding.
In your time as a practicing attorney,
Ted,
Laura, as a practicing attorney,
no,
how many
excuse me.
times did a judge, I'm sorry, no, how many times did a judge come to this kind of conclusion over a discovery dispute between counsel?
Well, actually, Ted, because I have been a practicing attorney, I'm well aware that it actually is quite common to have default judgments if somebody fails to abide by the discovery terms and provides information as required by a court of law. But the question I asked you, I'd like you to answer is, how does Rudy Giuliani intending to pay this particular damages?
Look, I'm not, we aren't going to say anything while with an appeal coming up. What I want to I want to get this point across. I'm not going to speak to your show. We've just started here. You got 50 minutes to go. But so many in the media today have failed to really explain what happened, right? Because you say you throw out this almost $150 million award that was issued, but people aren't being told the truth about how this decision came about, and it came about by a default judgment issued by this judge over a discovery dispute.
A jury decided that he was liable. The due process conditions were met. He had an opportunity. The mayor, the former U.S. Attorney of the State of New York, was not a layman in these terms. I do understand the point you're raising, but a jury has made this finding. A judge has made a finding.
What finding?
And
Laura,
we find ourselves
what finding did the jury make as
Ted,
opposed to what the judge?
Just because you raise your voice towards me does not mean that you have either been responsive or that the next point you're going to raise, I'm going to actually delve into deeper. Thank you so much for the time that you've taken today. I asked the questions. You provided the answers you wanted to give. Thank you so much.
And I appreciate the opportunity to come on in defense of America's Mayor, Rudy Giuliani.
Well, a pleasure on a Friday night.